Chapter 4 of Tactics Ogre Reborn is unique from the earlier chapters, in that most of the characters you can recruit within it overlap between Chaos, Law, and neutral route runs. That said, there's still some unique stuff going on, so we're going to cover who you can get, how you can get them, and some builds for some, but maybe not all, of these characters. This one's been a long time coming, so let's talk about it. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I'm a small creator, doing YouTube as his full-time career, so if you could consider subscribing, helping me in the algorithm by liking the video, that'd be very much appreciated. At my level, every individual action that helps the channel is massive. Thank you. When it comes to our Chapter 4 recruits, I've actually covered a bunch of them in their own individual videos already. Characters like Azelstan, Cressida, Lindl, and Deneb have all been covered previously, but for the sake of completion, we'll mention them in brief here as well. However, we're only going to deep dive into characters that haven't yet been mentioned or whom I don't plan on doing full videos for the sake of my time and yours. It's also worth mentioning that not every character we discuss today is exclusive to Chaos, but they are all available in Chaos, so we're going to talk about them all regardless. We're going to cover all the recruits and how to get them first, then we'll go over some builds afterwards. Also note that some of these characters and their recruitment involve major story spoilers. I'll do my best to avoid spoilers when and where I can, but you have been warned. With that said, let's start with Olivia. Olivia is the third of the 4 Farena sisters that you'll be able to acquire in the Chaos route. You'll encounter this young priestess at Brigantes Castle after the encounters that take place there. There's no special requirements, just clear Brigantes Castle, and Olivia will request to join. As the first recruit that you can get in Chapter 4, Olivia isn't the most exciting, coming in as a basic cleric. However, if you need some extra healing, she does the job admirably, thanks in large part to her naturally good RT, as all the sisters have. Her true power will come from her ability to take up the role of Shaman of Water after you complete the Apocrypha questline. Prior to that, if you wish to change Olivia to something other than cleric, typical options like Valkyrie or Witch will work as well. Next up is my absolute favorite character in the game, Cressida Obdalord. Cressida's side quest is one of the more involved ones in the game, and as many of you are probably already aware, I've got a full guide covering it in depth right here. Link is in the description if you want all the details, but the long and short of it is that you'll be starting the side quest, The Balma Musa Dead, which will take you on a winding series of battles that culminates in a dramatic fight against Nybeth once again. Cressida herself is a very powerful magical damage dealer, laying down the hurt with some nasty dark magic spells, while also likely being your first Necromancer and giving you the ability to turn other characters into Necromancers as a result. She's a worthy pickup for sure, so again, check out my full guide for an in-depth breakdown of her and her quest, including how Chaos Frame works. Next, and finally, the time has come to acquire Sherri, fourth and final Farena sister, aligned with the element of Earth. Sherri's recruitment quest isn't particularly hard, it's more that it's just kind of weird. First off, you'll progress through the story until you're sent to the Hagia Banhamuba to rescue Abuna Arcavius Maruva. This is one of 2 steps that always trip people up, so pay attention. You must weaken Sherri to below 10% HP, not to kill her, or you will fail this quest. Unlike so many other bosses, Sherri will not shift stone away if you kill her, only if you weaken her sufficiently. This shouldn't be too difficult, as you hold the high ground and she's a squishy witch in this battle, but still, take care. Pack a couple of weaker units if you must, clear out any problem units on Sherri's side as they approach, then whittle her down. Once she flees, we can move on to step 2. Now that you have succeeded in not slaying Sherri, you need to make it rain? Yes, you need to make it rain, and we're not talking about those dollar bills, y'all. It needs to be literally raining. After you return to Fidok Castle, but before you return to Barnisha, you're going to need to make a detour to Balma Musa while it's raining. The easiest way to make this happen is to buy a few Horns of the Savage at any shop. You know, a random item that makes it rain, ostensibly has some sort of effect on gameplay but not a noticeable one. Yeah, that one. Then you're going to enter a training battle at the closest city or town and use a couple of them until it gets nice and stormy. Make sure there's thunder and lightning and the like, and once it's pouring, you can retreat and head to Balma Musa. You should now get a scene involving Sherri, Deneb, and Olivia, after which you can recruit this wayward sister. There are 2 things to note here. First, in past versions of the game, Olivia needed good loyalty to have the scene trigger. I'm not sure that this is still the case in Reborn, but if you followed these steps and are still having a hard time, check Olivia's loyalty, see if it needs fixing. If it does, fix it up, try again. The second thing is that Sherri's quest and Cressida's quest have the potential to interfere with one another since they both trigger Embalm Musa, so I would recommend picking one and following it through before you start the other, just to keep things simple. A naturally gifted caster who joins as a witch, Sherri will handle magical damage rolls for you as well as any of her sisters. As usual, the best outcome for her will be to land in Shaman, but just like with Olivia, she can handle any other role for you as well. After all, in Tactics Ogre Reborn, it's always good to have more generically powerful spellcasters, and Sherri fits that mold perfectly. Now we need to talk about Catiua, and this is one that's going to be a little bit different from the rest of the recruits in this video. You'd be forgiven for assuming that you'd be able to properly recruit Catiua before Chapter 4, seeing as how she starts the game as a guest in the party, but alas, this is not the case. This is also probably the most spoiler-laden recruitment in this video, so if you don't want to know anything about Catiua and the series of events that lead to her recruitment, skip ahead to Azelstan via the chapters in the timeline. If you want to wait as well, I will be doing a specific video on Catiua to cover her recruitments and builds, so you can wait until then if you'd like. Still here? Okay. You're going to progress through the story until Abuna Maruva, again, asks Deneb if he has the wherewithal to fight his sister. Either answer will allow you to proceed, although it will change the upcoming fight and the requirements to successfully recruit Catiua. The battle in question takes place at Barnisha Castle, and if you said that you can fight Catiua, she will be present in the battle. If this is the case, you must clear the battle by defeating the boss without killing Catiua. If you chose to say instead that you cannot fight Catiua, she won't be present in the battle, and you can proceed as normal. Note too that this can be quite the tough fight, even without Catiua in it, so be prepared going in. Once the battle is over, there's one last step to take care of. There's a short series of dialogue options coming up that you must pass to recruit Catiua, and they change depending on if you had to battle her or not. If you, like me, chose to fight her, you'll choose the following. First off, say, I did only what I had to do. Then, when next given a choice, say, you are my sister and I love you. If you instead did not choose to fight her, you will be picking the following. I never abandoned you, and then I took no joy in our parting. Do all this correctly, and Catiua doesn't join. Don't worry, this is just a psych out. She'll be joining up once you get to Fidok Castle, and she'll join in her princess class, which is quite strong. And do note as well that if you fail to recruit Catiua, or intentionally chose not to, you'll get access to Deneb's exclusive class Lord instead, which is by far his best. So, consolation prize? At least? Next up we have Azelstan, and Azelstan is another character that I've already done a guide for. There's a link in the description once again, but we'll go through the broad strokes. Azelstan is the game's first buccaneer, wielding melee weapons like swords and ranged weapons like fusils in equal measure. Able to be built as an offensive DPS or a defensive wall, Azelstan has a lot of versatility to offer. What's annoying is that there's a lot of specific timing to recruit this scurvy sea dog, and one step too far in the story will mean utter failure. Because it's so easy to fail this one, we'll briefly run through the steps you need to take. It's bulleted list time. First, start off Chapter 4, read Port Omish Den of Thieves in the Warren Report. Do this before clearing Mount Hedon. You will next clear the battle at Port Omish while keeping Azelstan alive. Proceed until you're sent to Barnisha Castle. Before clearing Barnisha, however, read the Pirate's Graveyard in the Warren Report. Afterwards, enter the dungeon, leave, and read the Dread Pirate again in the Warren Report. You will then visit Port Omish for a scene. You will then visit Kadriga Fortress for a scene. Don't miss this one. This is the step that I missed on my first run through, and because I missed it, I had to wait until I could use the world system to go back and fix it. So just do yourself a favor. Make sure you go to Kadriga right after you go to Omish, okay? You will then finally finish your mission and clear Barnisha Castle. You'll clear a second battle at Port Omish, again keeping Azelstan alive. And finally, you'll enter the Pirate's Graveyard, pushing through the dungeon until you reach the Crystal Halls, where Azelstan will finally join. As usual, you will get some Pirate's Marks to turn characters into Buccaneers. Also, you can optionally choose to push on through the rest of the dungeon with Azelstan to get some nice scenes and potentially some treasure, but this isn't required as far as recruiting the man is concerned. Compared to Azelstan, our next recruit Lindl, the Fusilier, is a far easier recruit to get, but he's still just as worth it, in my opinion. After you've cleared Barnisha and gone to Fidok, you should find the Ramson Wreck Raised talk option in the Warren Report. Reading this will open the path to Grimsby, where you'll have to keep Lindl alive in a battle against the Dark Knights. Do so, and he'll join, allowing you to turn other units into Fusiliers as well. If you're interested in some builds and info about Fusiliers and Lindl, again, I have a video for him and them linked in the description. Ganpp the Beastmaster is our next recruit, and he may be an easy one to miss, seeing as how he's a side quest locked behind a side quest. Once you've cleared the quest to get Lindl, as we just discussed, check the Warren Report again and read the entry The Bandits of Naimrava to gain access to a map of the same name. In the battle here, you'll find Ganpp and his birds, Abda and Berta, or Abda and Berta the Younger if you killed the originals earlier in the story. Perhaps unsurprisingly, you need to leave the Griffins alive and reduce Ganpp to 10% HP. Do so, and he'll join up alongside the Griffins. Ganpp and his birds are quite nice. Ganpp is as fast as Canopus and Deneb, and the Griffins are faster than generic Griffins. If you don't already have a dedicated Beastmaster, Ganpp will serve the role well, or you could just use his good RT by turning him into another physical frontliner. Not really much else to say about this ruffian with a soft spot for his feathered friends. He's a solid unit. Use him if you like him. Now, of course, we have to discuss everyone's favorite Witcher and series mascot extraordinaire, Deneb. Like Cressida, this quest is really best explained in full detail, so I highly recommend my Deneb video. The quest involves entering the Palace of the Dead, potentially multiple times, recruiting numerous dragons, fighting a bunch of pumpkin-headed freaks, finding a magical shop that teleports around the world map every day. It's a whole time. Seriously, just watch my video on Deneb, link below. I promise it's worth it, as not only does Deneb have a really powerful personal class in Witcher that excels at casting status and debuff magic, she's also a candidate for the devastating Shaman class. And she's got an awesome witch hat, which, you know, is a plus. Finally, in terms of recruits, we come to Rudlum the Warlock. To get this suspicious mage, you'll need to enter the Palace of the Dead by reading the talk entry titled Mysterious Blast at Exeter. If you're afraid of the palace, don't worry. You only need to get to floor 2 to recruit Rudlum. You'll need to keep him alive during the battle, which admittedly could be a little tough, seeing as how he spawns near a small troop of zombies and zombie dragons, and may very well decide to dash headlong into them, so be careful and potentially be ready to restart, and he'll ask to join you so long as he survived. As far as the unique mages you get access to are concerned, Rudlum's nothing particularly special. He has better RT than a generic, but not by much, and he doesn't have any special access to any particular classes. That said, he does do really good magical damage comparing to my Shaman sisters, and he's a good candidate for Lichdom since he doesn't have any other class obligations. We'll go over that in the second half of the video, along with all the other characters who haven't been covered in their own guides, so let's talk some builds. Starting off our discussion of these Chapter 4 Chaos recruits and their builds, we have Olivia and Sherri. So they're both set up as Shamans for me, with two slightly different roles. You see here Olivia is a Water Shaman and Sherri is an Earth Shaman, as they are forced into those elements, and they both have very similar builds when it comes to their equipment and items. Olivia has a Wand of Water, Balder Shield +1, Wizard's Hat +1, a Robes of the Cataract, Leather Gloves +1, Mage Trousers, and Ring of Intellect +1. Sherri, on the other hand, is similar, with a Wand of Earth this time instead, the Balder Shield, Wizard's Hat, Robes of the Dust this time around, Leather Gloves, Mage Trousers, and Ring of Intellect +1. The goal of these equipment loadouts is to maximize the magic damage for these sisters as much as possible, as Shaman is a magic damage class through and through. It's what it does. I have the thematically appropriate wands on them. It's not really that big of a deal. The only benefit that you're getting off of these wands in terms of the elements is if you hit someone with them, you could afflict an adverse on them. Not super beneficial. Like, it could be good, but not the most necessary thing in the world. It's more just for theming. It does, of course, give you the MP charge 100. That is incredibly powerful on any caster, as well as spell range +5. As far as their robes are concerned, again, not really the most beneficial thing around. It's more for theming. They give some elemental resistances, things like that, to the particular element involved, but, like, Legitimately, it's more just the magical stats and the theming that I have these on them for. So everything else is just, again, set up to maximize intelligence and mind. There is more beneficial stuff that you can have when you start getting into relic gear. I just don't have it for them yet. As far as items are concerned, they have the same as well. Amending Seed +1, which has a good balance between healing and RT cost. Fruit of the Adept to give some extra MP and healing when necessary. A Blessing Stone, because everyone should have one for emergency resurrections. And a Spirit Stone of the Stars, so that they can give themselves a nice boost to their magical damage early. Olivia and Sherri both have similar spell loadouts as well. They both have the first and second level Apocrypha spells, that is, part of the reason to run Shaman, as well as their first level summon spells. I don't yet have access to Summon 2, but once I do, it's entirely possible that I'll be replacing this direct damage spell, Aqua Blast 3 for Olivia, and Vulcan Lance 3 for Sherri, with Summon 2, as it's not really that much of a concern in terms of actual mana once you get to that point in the game, so efficiency-wise, it'd be good to have more summon magic for more power. Finally, in terms of skills, they are both wielding cudgels, of course, because they have wands, but I do have some slight variation here for the sake of variety. Olivia is rocking the classic Engulf 2 for extra spell range, Nature's Touch for increased magical damage when it's activated, and of course Meditate 4, so she can get as much MP as possible whenever possible. Sherri, on the other hand, I have not equipped Engulf 2 on, instead picking up Telluric Resonance to grant Earth Touch to all of my allies around her and Earth Averse to enemies around her. I'm kind of messing around with a melee range Shaman build a little bit. I'll need a big heavy book for melee damage once I have access to one. That is a planned thing for the future for Sherri. But it is nice to be able to have your Shamans just essentially give all of your units around her a 20% damage boost by giving them an elemental affinity. Just because you can. Like, yeah, I'll take extra melee damage, why not? So this can be pretty good. She doesn't often need the plus magic range, but, it can be useful. Finally, of course, they have their cudgel finishers. Pretty standard, nothing special to talk about here. Now, let's move on to Ganpp, and we have two different possibilities here. As mentioned in the first part of the guide, we have Beast Tamer ready to go. And there's really nothing too special about this. I like to use axes on Ganpp, so I gave him a big fancy relic axe, switch his element to fire to synergize with it. There's no particular reason for this other than just he makes decent use of axes. And then his actual equipment loadout is all just about boosting his attack damage. So, +1 Balder Helm, +1 Balder Gauntlets, +1 Chain Leggings, gives him some decent defensive stats, gives him some decent offensive stats. And then I threw a Phoenix Flame Coat on here for him because it's got good defensive stats. It gives him Wade, some resistance to elemental stuff, some resistance to beast stuff. And, listen, if the man's running around with his griffins, he may as well look like a bird himself, right? The notable thing, of course, is the Barbarian's Earring. That is going to give him +20 in axe skill and then also 5 resistance against all enemy types. So just makes him that little bit extra tanky. As far as items are concerned, we have him set up with the classic Lobber Grenade strategy. That is a staple on Beast Tamers, honestly, if you're not going a support build anyway. This way, he can be throwing out some good, pretty cheap, affordable, ranged AoE damage as he runs up to the front to start smacking stuff with his axe. And we just have an array of elemental coverage here. Air, fire, light, and water. It really doesn't matter. Choose whichever ones you want, but I just like to have the variety just in case. As far as skills are concerned, our weapon skill, as always, is something that you want to prioritize on any sort of melee unit. Beast Tamer, in terms of attacking, doesn't have a ton of really great skills, so while I have him in Beast Tamer, we just have some HP plus with Constitution, just because extra little bit of tankiness, never hurt nobody. Of course, if you're trying to recruit specific beasts, or you're fighting specific beasts, you may want, a Tame skill, or a Repel skill, or something like that, but when I use Ganpp, I tend to just use him with beasts rather than dragons, so I do have him power beast, and then of course Lobber to work with our grenades, and you can see our axe finishers here. Now, allow me to present a little bit of a theory craft here, though. What if you didn't want to go Beast Tamer with Ganpp? What if you wanted to fulfill your fantasies of having a rough and tumble Ronin out there slaying your enemies for you? Well, allow me to propose Swordmaster Ganpp. Ganpp, again, has pretty decent RT and good physical attack, so having those benefits could actually mean that he could synergize with Swordmaster pretty well. He's not going to be as fast as someone like, say, Hobrim, but I mean, you can't really aspire to that in this game. Hobrim's just a monster. But Ganpp can still fulfill a pretty good role as a Swordmaster. So, for the sake of argument, I've equipped him here with the Ogre's Bane, so he can come out here and be slaying undead for us. It's going to be quite useful in the post-game with things like the Palace of the Dead. Of course, a Bronze Helm +1, and a standard array of physical damage boosting gear along with it. Nathalorc Rock Coat gives good defenses and attack. Gauntlets +1, same deal. Cloud Shoes, to be able to navigate around in the Palace of the Dead easily, fly back up if he gets knocked off ledges, all that type of stuff. And then, of course, the Sunfire Earring for that katana boost, defenses, all that type of good stuff. Coming over here, we have a standard array of physical damage dealing items. Mending Seed +1, again, gives good healing. Not a lot of RT cost, very nice stuff. Array and Plume, Strengthen, always good on any physical attacker. Blessing Stone, again, emergency resurrections. And then the Jewel of the Avatar, as of all of the classes out there, ninjas and then Swordmasters are probably the most likely to actually be able to dodge. So having a Jewel of the Avatar on my Swordmasters is something that I like to do. We have a good array of dances here so that Ganpp can still fulfill a little bit of a support role. Lion Dance for Strengthen is extremely strong. Harvest Dance for a little bit of spot healing in an emergency, very nice. Bellows Dance to fortify allies, also quite good. And then Comely Dance to breach enemies can be quite good if you can get it to land. Not the easiest thing, but I mean, again, with big clusters of enemies in the Palace of the Dead, that gives you a lot of targets, which increases the likelihood that you're going to get it to go off. So, of course, we have katana skills. I've not actually utilized this. This is just a theory craft, so our katana skill is only at 1 right now, but it could be quite better. And then the classic Preempt, Mighty Strike, and Falling Blade. Preempt, so you can get extra counterattacks in if you're ever attacked in melee. And then Mighty Strike and Falling Blade to be able to just cut any enemy in half. And you can see here, even though I've not specifically built Ganpp into this, like, he's got 954 physical attack. He's under 100 RT. He's got solid defenses. Like, if you wanted to actually build into this, Ganpp could probably make a pretty good Swordmaster. So, if you don't feel like going the Beast Tamer route, consider this. It could be fun. Finally, we have Rudlum the Warlock, or Lich, which he's neither here, but that's because I'm working on that whole Lich idea. So, as I said before earlier in the video, Rudlum doesn't have a specific class that he can lean into, but he does have a slight boost to his RT due to being a unique unit, and his magical damage is quite nice. So, I have him as a Necromancer right now with the intent of turning him into a Lich. Necromancer, you know, has pretty similar loadout to Lich, so it fits. We have him set up with Malitz's Staff, which is just, you know, another wand that gives charge 100 and spell range 5. The Balder Shield +1 for some extra defense and magic damage. And again, much like Sherri and Olivia, the standard array of magic boosting gear. Wizard's Hat +1, some Robes of Gloom, again, for thematic purposes. Leather Gloves +1, Mage Trousers, and Ring of Intellect +1. Now, something that I want to take note of here before we get into our items and spells and skills is look at Rudlum's magic damage. 682. I've barely used this man. Okay? Like, I eventually want to turn him into a Lich, but he's not seen nearly as much use as maybe some of the sisters. He hasn't had any charms given to him, anything like that. Compare. 10 more magic damage than Sherri. Significantly more. That's like, what, 35? No, like 45 more damage than Olivia. Rudlum's got good power behind him. And yeah, he's ever so slightly slower, but Rudlum can actually deal out pretty solid damage if you want him to. Now, I currently have him set up as more of a status caster, but he could work either way. So let's see what we have going on here. Again, standard array of items: Mending Seed, Fruit of the Adept, Blessing Stone, Spirit Stone of the Stars. We've talked about these already. Pretty bog standard stuff, but it'll get the job done. Then, in terms of spells, this is where we're going to get some necromancy and dark magic going on. We have Living Corpse, so that Rudlum can be used as a bit of an emergency healer, emergency resurrections, which can be quite useful. Meteor Strike 3 for those big clusters of enemies. Again, synergizes well with his intelligence. He's going to be dealing a lot of damage. Curse, so that we can weaken tough enemies. There's going to be plenty of those in the Palace or San Bronsa, so very nice to have. And then Charm, if we're not going to quite be able to deal with one of those tough enemies for a long time, we can at least have them fighting for us for a while. Then in terms of skills, of course, you want to have Cudgels. I apparently never put Cudgels on Rudlum when I was leveling him, so whoops, this should be a lot higher. You guys, you know, these things happen. Consecrate Dead, so again, who needs a cleric when we can just, you know, prevent undead from resurrecting because of being a necromancer. Meditate 4 for getting our MP, and Engulf so that we can cast spells at a greater range. And really, I think I need to come back around on Rudlum and prioritize getting him to Lich faster, because it seems like he's actually got some good potential there that I kind of didn't pay close enough attention to. So consider building this guy out. And again, you can do this as a warlock if you wanted to have some more utility with golems and things like that, or you make him a necromancer, make him a lich. Like, there are options here. Just because he can't go witcher or shaman doesn't necessarily mean that Rudlum is useless. And those are the builds for the characters that we're going to be covering in this video. And man, this one was a whopper. Can't really say I'm too surprised. There's so many characters to cover in Chapter 4, regardless of which route you're on. And again, that's without getting into the nitty-gritty details of a lot of them. So, like I said previously, links to all of the videos for the more in-depth guides for the characters who need it are in the description. I will hopefully get my Catiua video up soon, so that'll be in the description as well. I'll add that in post-script. And thank you guys for watching. I know there's been a lot of Tactics Ogre content, a lot of Fire Emblem content, and there's still a ton of stuff to do for both games, so plenty of stuff to look forward to with me in the future. If you have a particularly interesting build for any of these characters that we've gone over here, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. And now that we're finally done with the Chaos recruits, we're going to be talking about Law, going into, you know, Ravnus, Yunin, Zapan, all that type of stuff. We'll be going through guides for them, builds for them. It's going to be a good time. With all that being said, though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I do very much appreciate it. Hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.